Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Hi, Marty.
Hey, Marty, this is Andrew from the County Executive's Office. I will be sharing the screen with Monica as well. So we're both here.
Dan Ditchkoshke from the Erie County Sheriff's Office. Marty, you're still mute.
Thank you for your attendance.
My pleasure, Professor.
So we still have a minute or so before people get started. I just wanted to make sure that everybody felt comfortable that we would follow the same format that we did yesterday and try to get through questions and comments. I'll have an opening statement, and when we end, we end. I think we should give other task force members an opportunity to sign in. I had only a couple of people say that they were having difficulties with their schedules. So I expected a few more people to be present today. So we'll give everybody a few more minutes to get on with us, and then we can start.
But I believe but never thought he'd stay. Saying, quote,
hey, good afternoon, everyone.
going
Hi, Marty.
Hello, if that was Melody. How are you today?
Doing well, no complaint. Thanks for asking.
Excellent. I just want to say one more time how excited I am to have somebody else who can share the lifting on analyzing data. I'm usually find myself all alone in an office with no friends entering or messing with data. So anyways, I'm glad to have a fellow researcher on board. Going to be helpful.
Likewise. Thank you.
I still want to give people a couple more seconds to sign on. So let me ask you a question. Are you all good with your doctoral committees and everything like that?
Not yet. That's actually coming next semester. So this spring. So I'm looking forward to getting that all scheduled. And I have not yet decided. I have a couple of studies that I'm currently doing. So I haven't decided yet which study I'm going to focus on. The good news is that I think I have enough materials. So that's usually the most difficult thing is finding data and material and subjects, and but I think I have that part, so I'll figure it out.
Excellent. I'm just very impressed. Name the title of your program. Did you say qualitative and quantitative methods?
No, well, quantitative, so educational psychology and quantitative methods. I prefer quantitative methods because it's just numbers and data opposed to qualitative interviews and focus groups. I can do both.
Mhm.
The numbers just go a little quicker.
I like to say that the qualitative puts some meat on the bones of the analysis. So
I agree.
very good.
I agree. I think that a mixed method approach is typically the best because you can support your quantitative analysis with anecdotals and interviews and qualitative support, which is what most people want to hear. No one really wants to hear just the numbers.
And I'm glad you said that because hopefully that's what we'll be able to do with this task force. We'll have continued public comment. We'll be able to hear people's experiences, and we'll be able to add those on top of what we learn from digesting whatever data we can come up with. So excellent. And before I get started, I will just say that if you need any assistance, I'm here for you. I have a size 13 and a half foot, and I've used it for several PhD candidates that need some motivation. So I'm here as a resource for you. Okay.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Well, let's get started, everybody. Good afternoon. My name is Marty Floss. I'm a professor of criminal justice at Hilbert College. For the past decade, I've been chair of the graduate program in criminal justice administration. And for the better part of the year, I have focused as the director of the Institute for Law and Justice. I am chair of the task force, the Police Reform and Reinvention Collaborative Task Force in Erie County. I am virtually with members of the task force that have a wide kind of understanding, experiences, and views on our charge from the governor. Yesterday, I spoke a bit about the timeline that we need to progress through. So I won't review that. I'll tell you that just like yesterday, I took the opportunity as an old professor to give a brief lecture. Today won't be any different. So this time there won't be an exam after it, but everybody will owe me a 3-page essay in response to these comments. Again, I'm not being serious. Anyways, yesterday we talked about Sir Robert Peel and his 9 principles of policing that have been in act for hundreds of years. We boiled them down to 3 core ideas that the goal of policing is to prevent crime, not catching criminals, that the key to preventing crime is earning public support. And the way that you earn public support is by respecting community principles. And winning public support requires hard work to build that reputation. So when I followed that, we talked briefly about the various eras that criminal justice administrations have progressed through since the 1880s in overseeing law enforcement organizations. I did that to give us a little context. Today, I would like to spend just a couple of minutes in a bit of a different direction that I hope will be informative for both the task force as well as the viewing public. We have a big charge in front of us. As I said yesterday, we're at what many are calling a watershed moment, and that we have an opportunity right now to continue, as we mentioned yesterday, improving organizational effectiveness. In this instance, it happens to be regarding law enforcement organizations, but all good organizations and companies need to constantly thrive, strive for improvement. So another thing that we have today that I would like to focus on, because I think it's important for the task that's ahead of us, is to think about for a minute, just a minute, the concept of critical thinking. I think it's going to be very important that this task force be able to listen to people, pull in information, and then think critically before we write our report, which will again be reviewed by the public, who will be given an opportunity to give their comments on our report before it goes to the governor's office. So for the task force members, my challenge is one of critical thinking. And I have 2 sentences that I hand out to students that I think does a great job at defining what critical thinking is and why it's important. So, critical thinking is the intellectually disciplined process of actively and skillfully conceptualizing, applying, analyzing, synthesizing, and/or evaluating information gathered from or generated by observation, experience, reflection, reasoning, or communication. And this part's important, as a guide to belief and action. In its exemplary form, it is based on universal intellectual values that transcend subject matter divisions, meaning clarity, accuracy, precision, consistency, relevance, sound evidence, good reasons, depth, breadth, and fairness. And why is this important for this task force and for all the public that are watching out there? Because everybody thinks. It's in our nature to think. Much of our thinking, left to itself, is biased, distorted, partial, uninformed, or downright prejudiced. That the quality of our lives and that of what we produce, make, or build depends precisely on the quality of our thought. Shoddy thinking is costly, both in money and in the quality of life. Excellence in thought, however, must be systematically cultivated. It doesn't just happen. And I would tell you that I took that from the foundation of critical thinking, and it is a challenge for all of us. How are we going to take what information, what observations, what experiences that we can gather and collect, and how can we put those together in an organized way to help improve, our thinking, but most importantly, to guide behavior in the direction that this task force is going to make recommendations to improve policing in the Erie County Sheriff's Office. And I'll finish with one last thing, because I'm about to start teaching a graduate course in research methods. And I will tell you that the aim of science in general is that we seek to be able to make predictions, accurate predictions. If we can predict things with 100% certainty, we can then own that process that we're looking at. And so the goal of science ultimately then is one of control. So we try to predict things so that we can control things. We had to learn about gravity, for example, so that we could predict its influences on things like objects. And we came to a place that we understood and could predict how it works so accurately that today we don't even think about, well, maybe today we do, but we generally don't think about getting on a plane and flying someplace warm in the winter, which really makes no sense if you think about it. Everything we've ever thrown up in the air has always come crashing down to earth. So why we put a building up in the sky with hundreds of people in it and it doesn't crash really doesn't make common sense, but science has got us to that point. I mention that because we, as a task force, as a community, I believe need to use, and I'm advocating that we use the lessons of science so that we can make predictions about how people behave, both citizens and law enforcement. And we do this with the goal of predicting and control. We're trying to have a harm reduction approach. It's harmful when people commit crimes. It's harmful when people get arrested. It's harmful when people spend their lives wasted behind bars. And so we need to use science to try to improve things the best we can. We have a very specific charge from the governor about the Erie County Sheriff's Office. And I will start then to open up this public comment meeting with just that, the comments that we have. And so everybody knows people have submitted comments or questions, and they have come to the county. We will have them read off to us, so that we can take that in and use it to inform our report and our thinking as a task force. But also, if people want to make brief general comments, not giving positions, but general comments that help respond to the question or comment, that would be fine. We'll go from one to the next until we're done. And then at the very end, we'll have some task force kind of housekeeping, if you will, and some discussions about moving forward, when we'll have some meetings, what types of meetings we'll have, and so forth. So with that, Andrew, if you could read to us the first question, comment, or observation sent in to us by the public, I would appreciate that.
Yes, the first comment calls to discontinue dispatching police to 911 calls for mental and behavioral health calls. People in crisis need care, not guns and cops. Instead, send social workers and mental health professionals for all mental and behavioral health calls. So that was one comment out of there. The next, along with the same line, is defund the sheriff office, police services division, and invest those funds into the mental health and social services division of the county that provides services meeting the basic health and daily needs of the community. Investing in health and community-based services is essential to creating safer communities. Also, transparently identify when and where the sheriff's office is collaborating with ICE or other federal immigration enforcement, and stop any and all collaboration now. So those were comments from one member of the public.
Okay. I'll start with a response to say that I think that all of those address one of the four focuses identified by the governor. We have already established a subcommittee that will look into exactly that topic. And we've titled it the role and function of police. So we will certainly be looking at those issues. But again, today isn't the time to debate those things, but that was very an informative question, and it will definitely be dealt with by the task force and one of the subcommittees specifically. If anybody else has any other comments, general comments that they'd like to make, feel free. Okay. Andrew, next comments.
Okay. Given budget constraints and cuts, we should stop all police overtime pay. The numbers speak for themselves. If a true emergency did require officers to work more than their shift on a particular day, they could have that time applied to future time off the same way many other salaried positions work. This would accomplish two goals: a balanced and predictable budget.
Anybody interested in responding? I would say that also is a area that we have a subcommittee established for that we'll be looking into. I'm trying to look over on another computer. And our first, so to reiterate for everybody out there in YouTube world, the first subcommittee is going to be the functions of police, and we'll look at the role of police and also the staffing, budgeting, and equipping of police of the Erie County Sheriff's Office. The second subcommittee is employing smart and effective policing standards and strategies. That will include procedural justice and community policing. It will include law enforcement strategies to reduce racial disparities and build trust, and we'll also be focusing on community engagement. The third subcommittee is fostering community-oriented leadership, culture, and accountability. And that subgroup will be looking at leadership and culture, tracking and reviewing use of force and identifying misconduct, internal accountability for misconduct, citizens oversight and other external accountability, and data technology and transparency. And the fourth subcommittee is recruiting and supporting excellent personnel. And that will focus on recruiting a diverse workforce, training and continuing education for officers, and support officer wellness and well-being. So those are the four subcommittees that we have established based on the governor's mandate and the sub-issues that will begin our examination into those areas. And I would simply say that personally, as a general comment, I don't think any conclusion is appropriate at this point. conclusions like defunding the police or having sheriffs work or not work with agencies. We didn't get there yet. We need to look into it. We will look into it. We're going to look at the interactions of the sheriff's office and those that enforce the law. We've asked already for a list of activities that the sheriff office works in conjunction either through special units like the canine or narcotics, or the an aerial surveillance. There's many specialties within the Erie County Sheriff's Office, but as well looking at interactions with other agencies that impact Erie County residents. So all of that will be considered, but at this point, it would be wrong-minded to come to some conclusion. So, next question or comment, Andrew, please. Unless somebody else has a comment first, I apologize. Okay, next question, please.
Okay. It states, we need better training on de-escalation, mental health, and nonviolent measures. We need true police accountability, including an independent investigatory body for critical incidents. We need the passage of Carroll's law that requires officers to report the bad apples that we know may exist.
Okay. Anyone have any comments? Again, I would say that all of those things directly fall into one of our subcommittees or the categories that fall under that subcommittee. We will be looking into all of those things. As just a general comment, people are have brought up, I believe that what was just mentioned was Carriel's law, and I would just suggest that police officers today are already required to do that, but certainly anything or impact that that passage has needs to be considered, and maybe that's an area where a policy or a procedure is changed as a result of that action. So to be considered for sure. Anyone else have any comments? Okay, Andrew.
Yes. Having something like the ability to report other officers anonymously to a third-party agency without fear of their name getting out or reprisal would probably help cut down on these kind of issues and raise the standards on our officers. Also, a justice system that focuses on rehabilitation rather than punishment and prevention through community support is the only responsible and truly just way forward. So that was another comment. Would you guys like to comment on that, or would we like to go on?
Well, I'd like to hear personally the first one, the beginning. I couldn't quite hear you.
The first comment was having something like the ability to report other officers anonymously to a third-party agency without fear of their name getting out or reprisal.
Okay, gotcha. I would just say, in generally, at one point, I was the federal overseer of the Buffalo Police Department with what is commonly referred to as a consent decree. And I would tell you that that all started because somebody called the FBI, and they acted as an independent investigative agency, and it resulted in action from the United States Department of Justice. So while I think we have procedures in place, I think certainly that will fall again under other procedures and policies to consider, and maybe we can can find a new or better way to get that done. I think that is true. If people can feel safe in identifying poor behavior, we'll all be better off. Does anybody else have comments to that statement?
Yes, I would
Go
like
ahead.
to. Yes, I'd like to add that in addition to other officers being able to have a third party to report to, I think the same should be held true for just general people. I have heard that some people have wanted to make complaints. However, they were told by other officers not to because they would be targeted by the police force. So instead of making a complaint, they decided not to because they thought it would be worse off for them. So I don't know if those opportunities exist for general regular people, but opportunities should be made available so that their identities are protected.
Absolutely. And I can't agree with you more. And whoever said that to that person, I think violated their oath. If that was truly done, I would tell you as the overseer of the Buffalo Police Department, part of the uh, memorandum of agreement with the Department of Justice had many particular requirements on how the department needed to publish the procedures on how to make a complaint. It had to be both in English and in Spanish. It had to be posted at every district house or precinct. Um, and I think at the end of the day, it comes down to accountability that people need to be able to make a complaint and 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 that it gets acted on. So that is important, and we do need to make sure that there is a process in place where residents have a direct and manageable way that they can not fear to report bad behavior. Absolutely. And if people don't, then there needs to be accountability for those in the chain of command that allowed that to occur. But excellent point. Anyone else?
If I may, I would just add that I think there also needs better training on those officers or personnel that are tasked with collecting those complaints. Because I do think it's not unusual for a complaint to just be pushed to the side without really giving much investigation into the same.
Excellent, and thank you. Uh, Again, one of I think the important activities that we took care of was in Buffalo was to develop a procedure that needed to be followed up on, and it had to be done in a very timely way. You give people 10 days, 14 days, something that needs to, where an officer needs to present an issue or report an action, like they used force. If a complaint occurs, people have to have a time limit on when they do something. They have to document what they do and when they do it and how they did it, and have to have a recommendation. So we can develop procedures and look at best practices that require people to do those things. And what happens is, say a complaint comes forward, when people backtrack, then it becomes apparent that somebody didn't do something that they were required to do, and then you hold those people accountable through a disciplinary process that's agreed on. So those are certainly things that we will need to look at specifically within the Erie County Sheriff's Office and as a task force. Again, I mentioned that critical thinking stuff in the beginning because our our challenge is going to be to either find something that we think will work really well, or to be creative and come up with some solution that makes sense for Erie County, that will work. So, important area for sure. Anyone else have a comment? Okay. Any more, Andrew?
Yes, so we are going to start taking comments from our YouTube live channel. The first comment we have from a resident is, how can a resident get copies of the policy, of the budget, overtime, and disciplinary records of the Sheriff's Department?
So I don't have an answer for all of that. Some of that we might need one of the attorneys on the task force to respond to. I don't believe everybody's personnel records are a matter of public availability. People have privacy issues, but where they get that other information, I'm not sure. Can anybody from the sheriff's office speak to that?
I would volunteer as an attorney that certainly they can exercise their rights under freedom of information request to the individual agencies which they're seeking that information. New York State has a bunch of forms generated through the Office of Open Government, I believe it is, that a person could utilize in gathering that information they're requesting. And especially recently with the repeal of 50A, there's a lot more information available to the public concerning specific officers and disciplinary.
So they can FOIL that information, that request, and from an agency, and wait for a response. I think the Department of Criminal Justice Services is another state agency that collects a lot of information, and one might be able to get information from them as well. It might have to be FOILed the same way, but should be available. Anyone else? Okay, Andrew.
Another comment from the public is, I thought crime prevention was through solving economic issues which drive crime. How can police proactively prevent crime?
Anybody else want to talk? I'm going to run out of breath pretty soon. I've got a response, but I'd like to hear from somebody else.
Hi, Cesar. One of the things that the police can, proactively, this is my opinion, help with the crime situation in any community is for the police themselves to do exactly what is called community policing. And by community policing, basically what that is the police themselves are actually an integral part and an integral component of the community. And it's not that they only appear in the community when there is a 911 call and then we need the police here, but it is those kinds of things where you see the police or the sheriff, at cultural events, the gatherings of the community and so on and so forth, just for the sake of being a member of that particular community. That is one way in which they proactively can prevent crimes within that particular community.
Excellent. Thank you, Isa. Anybody else want to comment on that statement or question?
Yeah, Marty, this is Bill Krebs from Springville. I think I agree with what was just said, because community policing is so very important for that reason. And it seems to me from some of the initial data and that I've observed in my own village and what you've said, Marty, is that in the policing function, the deputies of the Erie County Sheriff Department do a lot more than just arresting people. They spend a lot of their time in the community, and I'm interested in that data because we can flesh that out and drill down through that and find out just what community policing is and how it does improve the relationship and the support of the community of the policing function. That is, to me, very, very important part of this task force.
Excellent. Thank you. And it won't be ready in time for us, but I have a graduate student now reaching out to all the police departments in Erie County and trying to build a library, if you will, of community policing activities that they all do, that any of them do, so that we can have a repository for all agencies to see what everybody else is doing and maybe to build on what one another are trying to achieve in their communities. Unfortunately, won't be ready until next year, but at the Institute for Law and Justice, I'll have that available at some point for a community resource. And you're right, Mr. Krebs. This is they do a lot of stuff, and 90% of it is calls for service where they're helping people. So I guess, is there anybody else that would like to make a comment?
Yeah, Marty, Kevin Barnes here.
Yes, Kevin.
I guess looking at policing, I mean, from a reactive versus a proactive model, for the most part, I think most people can understand that, policing is mostly reactive, where people make a call, whether it be a 911 call or some other communication where police respond to a crime after the fact or an issue after the fact. And proactive policing, with the whole community policing model, I mean, it really is a collaborative and trust-building mechanism between the police and the public. And I think in recent times, that community policing model has taken a hit. And so I think it's more about trust building with the public they would have to come back to be successful with community policing. And, for the most part, it's more reactive. Proactive is a smaller amount of policing out there, but really is it really hinged on community policing.
Excellent. Thank you for that input, Kevin. Anybody else? I don't want to be disrespectful, but I would disagree slightly with a premise of the comment that crime is generated solely by, I don't know exact wording, but poverty, something along those lines, economics. Certainly we have crime across the social economic strata, and so it's not the only thing that causes crime. I would also suggest that we do know that there are policing initiatives that have helped to prevent crime. So there's a whole list of different types of policing that have been advocated over, say, the past 20 years, but some of the more famous ones were problem-oriented policing, for example. One of my professors at Rutgers University invented the idea that has been shown to be successful called hotspots policing in some applications. We've used geomapping as a way to look at where crime coalesces and try to predict, again, using science to figure out where we may use our resources or find support. But I think one of my favorite preventive activities that I ever participated in was through the city of Buffalo. We had a Broadway Fillmore police initiative, neighborhood initiative. It was ultimately written up by Robert Trajanowicz, the father of community policing. He put it in an anthology, the very first one on successful applications. And what we did when President Bill Clinton said he was going to put 100,000 police officers on the streets, I wrote and got a grant for 4 of them for 3 years, and we put them in Bishop Turner Carroll High School. and they weren't there as resource officers or making sure people showed up for class. They were there to build relationships. I had 10 interns at a time. We helped them with homework. We played games with them. I learned about double Dutch jump roping. We took them on field trips. We got them fed. Feeding children is a great way that, in this instance, the law enforcement agency helped raise funds that got people food in the morning, and children learn better when they're not hungry. And so there's lots of things that we've done, I believe, that have shown to have a preventative impact. But I would agree with the basic premise that it is really hard to do and not always successful. So we need to keep looking at ways that can help build our community. So that'd be my comment to that comment. Anybody else want to say something? Isa.
Marty, one of the things, and as Kevin explained, the concept of proactive versus reactive policing. One of the challenges that we all have is that we are very, very good at collecting data and tracking certain specific data sets, and we are very good at how many arrests the police made, how many 911 calls they respond. But if you go and try to find a database that says, okay, how many sheriff officers or how many sheriff deputies were at the community activity of such and such, how many of those individuals appear at a regular block club just to say hi and talk to the people. That particular data is very rarely gathered. And if it is, it never gets down to the public. It's something that, the public doesn't see. And I think that we need to figure out how to show out there, not just the things that they do when they react, but what are the things that they do when they are proactive, even though the proactivity piece, the result of the proactivity piece is very, very difficult to quantify. Very difficult to quantify. I recall I spent one entire afternoon watching a basketball game between the Buffalo City Police basketball team and young men from the Buffalo Urban League. It was a super event. But that was, I didn't see anything published out there anywhere. And I cannot even tell you, okay, what kind of impact did that particular game have on those individuals, let alone what kind of impact that particular game had in crimes in the community where those young men and where those police actually hang around.
I agree, Isa, and maybe we'll give Melody a second to chime in here. I think that you've hit something very near and dear to my heart, and quite frankly, I made a general comment to your successor that as a good leader, I think we need to think about what information we collect, because when we do that, people to that information. If you're going to the effectiveness of a New York State trooper by the number of tickets that they write, then you're going to get some people who write a great deal of tickets. If you measure the success of a community police officer in a more difficult way, like how many activities did you go to, how many times did you help somebody out, those kinds of things that you mentioned, Isa, it's much more different, and I would suggest we don't do that. And I would say that, quite frankly, something even more direct that I don't think we generally collect, for example, is our interactions. I have calls for service, but I don't have access to traffic information. Who gets pulled over? Who gets stopped? Who gets searched? You see what I mean? We don't, I don't have that easily accessible. Maybe it's out there. Maybe we can find it. I sure like to ask. But my point in response to you, Isa, is I think that's incredibly important. Central critical thinking should be in each of these subcommittees. What are those very important, telling bits of information that we can collect that will give us the best vantage point to understand whatever we're trying to look at? And then we'll be in a better place to talk more specifically about a future direction. But right now, I think we do a lot of guessing. Melody, would you like to add anything? Did I say anything incorrect or?
Oh, I think you did a good job. I just wanted to be very careful about proactive and reactive, because proactive is typically defined by police officers kind of acting on, their own initiative to go out and, mitigate to stop crime essentially before it happens, and that can be done in a variety of ways. However, there are some things that I think that are outside. There are some things that can be done, internally. Number one, training. I think Marty, you mentioned a couple of things about, who's getting pulled over, and those different things. And perception, and really training officers on their own bias and implicit bias, and their own prejudice. And I say that because considering some definitions of proactive policing, you can really take a deficit mindset to search out crime, even if we use science per se to say that these areas, which I think have been done in the past, to say that these areas typically are the areas that have the highest amount of crime. And how is that information being measured? From a statistician's point of view, you can tell whatever story you want to tell with data, depending on the angle that you use. If most police officers are overly policing an area, they're obviously going to have more arrests in this particular area. You'll see, we can talk about the amount of arrests that are made of Black people, and then the other question is, well, how many white people did you arrest? So I think that there are a lot of different things that we can look at to balance the scales a bit more, and be thoughtful, considering these proactive measures, because if proactive measures are defined in certain ways, that's going to increase the amount of criminals being caught, opposed to, as you so eloquently shared a little bit in the beginning, the purpose of being able to stop crime, opposed to quote unquote catching criminals. So I just think that we have to be careful and thoughtful, and more advanced, and use the information that we have on biases and prejudices, so that they're, because essentially the reason why we're all around the table is because of some great disparities that have been identified nationally, locally, among communities of color and their interactions with the police.
Excellent. And I agree with what you're saying, and particularly, one of the things that I think is coming out is that actions that lead to more aggressive interactions with more citizens leads to more official actions. Anyways, I do think that we're kind of violate one of my little rules here, that I want to be this as a listening. I don't want to guide our comments or conversations to the public, but these are certainly important things. But I will, just as a general comment, say that we do other things in criminology, if you will. Routine activities, for example, says that if you look at any crime, they always have three components. You have a motivated offender, a suitable target, and the lack of a capable guardian. Those three elements, if you think about it, are around for every single crime that ever happens. And what police try to do then, who implement this idea, is to put some kind of hurdle in between the motivated offender and the suitable target. And we've even come up with the topic or the concept of target hardening. So an easy example of using a preventative measure that we've shown to be successful is a simple one. We turn lights on outside in certain places. We have locks on our houses. We have big smelly dogs that bark at people when they come too close. We do lots of things to help prevent crime that aren't mean-spirited or problematic. So the committees are going to have to look at all of this stuff. We're going to have to try to figure out which ones are the most helpful and productive, which ones are the opposite, and try to get rid of those and encourage the better. Isa, you had a comment.
No, basically what it is the limitation of the definitions. When I talked about proactive policing, I am talking about that deputy sheriff that is hanging around outside family court and sees an older lady attempting to cross the street, and he comes in and helps her to get across the street. To me, that is proactive policing. That is proactive policing, as well as what Melody mentioned. So if we narrow the definition to just the police looking to prevent crime and so on and so forth, but when I'm talking about proactive policing, it's pretty much, looking at the whole ball of wax of all the things that they do with the community, with the people. Chief Lockwood having a hot dog cookout in a park where anyone in the community can attend and everybody shows up and so on. That to me is proactive policing.
I agree. Anyone else have comments or a response, Melody? Okay. Andrew, could we have another?
Yes, so I believe this will probably be our final question from the public so that we can get to the rest of our agenda.
Okay.
And I'm going to read it just how it is. It says, common sense would dictate that having a sheriff who supports subverting a New York state law, example given as the SAFE Act, should be censored. So I think what they were trying to say, if the sheriff is openly speaking out about a New York state law, is that reflective of, how does that reflect upon Erie County and their residents?
I think that comment speaks for itself. I mean, we can certainly consider it. I don't know. I mean, the sheriff is also a citizen that I guess can express themselves and have opinions. If they act in a way that is contrary to law, that would be something else, and they would be held accountable for it. But that's something that we'll certainly consider in the subcommittees. So that was the last one, Andrew?
Yes, we do have a couple of comments on our YouTube page. A lot of those comments we did answer yesterday, and they are recorded on our YouTube live stream that we did record yesterday. So I would ask, I'm sorry?
Could you just state them quickly so that people who don't, unless they're...
Sure. So one was asking about the scope of what the task force would be looking into as far as what areas do the sheriff's police. Also, yeah. Basically, a lot of questions saying, going back to the implementation of Carroll's law as well. and basically asking what specifics of the task force what specifics are the task force considering? Is this reform inclusive of reallocating dollars?
Okay, so we did address all of those. Sorry for putting you on the spot there, but we will consider all of those things. And we did identify both yesterday and again, I reiterated today, specifically the 4 subcommittees and the areas of interest that fall within each that have been identified by the governor. So we'll be working on all of those, and then we will also be working on everything that we do and hear going forward. I think the citizens in Erie County have just as important of a voice in this matter as the governor, and we need to be able to respond to all of their questions, comments, concerns, and come up with a report that will try to be fair to all stakeholders, and one that will improve not only policing and the lives of citizens in Erie County, but also for the police officers that are looking for guidance on how to conduct their work. So I think we'll address all of those, and thank you very much. Does anybody have any comments or questions before we move on to the last issue?
Yeah, Marty, this is Bill
Yes,
Krebs
sir.
again. I'd just like
Yes,
to
Bill.
say that the comments made today and some of the questions, I think are really going to be helpful to the task force in addressing the 4 different areas that we've been charged to by the governor. I mean, just think of the topics. I've been trying to write them down with general titles: dispatching, social services, collaboration with other agencies, budget issues. You know, how much is all this going to cost? The training, grievance against officers, transparency, a really big thing is moving forward in this day and age. And we've done an awful lot of talking among ourselves about community policing. So the topics addressed today, really, I think, are giving us the kind of feedback that we talked about yesterday at our previous meeting of what we need as a task force to go forward. Thank you.
Excellent, Bill, and I agree that it's certainly giving us added focus to each of our subcommittees and reinforcement, quite frankly, that we're on the right track. We already identified the areas that pretty much everybody had mentioned yesterday and today. I am very interested in continuing to give the public as many opportunities moving forward as possible to give their input. And then it's up to us to do our best to deeply consider each one of the comments, questions, or concerns or experiences that are shared, and try to put it together in some organized fashion so that we can, at the end of the day, not only do we have to have a report, but I think more importantly, it's like assessment in my classes. Some professors think we have to do it for outside agencies, and we do, but I say it's much more important that we do good work so that the next time we do this, we do it better. And so usually these kinds of activities help us, the individual, in this case, the Erie County Sheriff's Office, the most. I want this to guide action and belief, like I had quoted from the Foundation for Critical Thinking. I want all of this to move forward in a logical, well-described way for good reasons, and that'll give everybody guidance. So the first thing I guess it's a nice segue. I got permission today, and I will just put this up to the task force and offer it up as a possible way to get additional community input. But last week, for the first time, I used the technology that allowed a panel of folks to be socially distanced and safe in our auditorium that holds about 400 people. We spread out approximately 10 people, and we had them on camera. And then we invited the rest of the world to join us virtually. And in that event, we happened to be showing Brian Stevenson's film on reimagining justice. And we had people call in and also send in comments. I'm very happy to say that Hilbert College has been able to stay open and healthy. And it looks like we're going to make it to our original plan of keeping face-to-face classes until Thanksgiving. And like most institutions, if they're not already fully online, the plan has been to move online virtually after Thanksgiving. People across the country realized it would be a bad move for society if we sent all of our students home to visit with their families and then bring them back onto campus, that could be a huge super spreader of the coronavirus. So colleges and universities across the country have made the decision to go completely online after Thanksgiving. I mention all of that because that means that our campus will be basically empty after Thanksgiving, and therefore we wouldn't be putting our students in jeopardy. And I could have, I guess one of two options, something like have the task force in the auditorium, and we could have a live Zoom with the community, or I didn't ask specifically, but we might be able to have up to 50 total people if we wanted to allow folks from the community to come in. We would have to control the registration and sign everybody in and have a process, but we could probably even do that second one if there was a strong desire to do that. But the first option, I'm definitely putting out there for the committee to consider. Does anybody have any thoughts on that offer? Are those crickets I hear? Okay, well, and I think some of us are having some connection problems, so that might be interfering with our communications here. But that's something for us to consider. I think that it would be a worthwhile endeavor to try to have, multiple opportunities. And as Bill Krebs said yesterday, we could have different approaches in any way, any avenue that we could find that would foster communication from the community to us should be encouraged. So, my first action was to see if I could help out at the college, and we can. And if there's anything else that anybody can come up with, I think we need to continue to get input. We can also continue our committee's work and meet the time-sensitive guidelines that are set out for us, and still allow community members to provide their input as we go. And as long as I think we could do that up until some short period of time before we have to complete our draft. So I would encourage that we think about finding as many paths for people, citizens, to offer comment to us as a task force before we put this report together. And then equally important, publicize and encourage public response to the document that we produce. So again, any comments on that? Okay, well, I need some comments on the last issue on our agenda, which is discussion for the next meetings, format and the dates. So the dates that we have already put out there was maybe November 4th and 5th or 9th and 12th through the 12th, somewhere in there. I don't know if that works for people. And then the next question is, and we started to discuss it last meeting, do we want to do it in person or virtually? And so I will leave that up for comment from all of you. And Melody, welcome back. Thanks for tackling your technology. Any comments on when we should meet or how we should meet, please?
I'm open to the meeting style. I do agree that we should make it as accessible as possible. I think Miles might have mentioned during the last session that some people might not have access to technology or may not be able to use it. So that format could work. Someone else mentioned it might have been Brittany. A hybrid model. I think that would work as well. As far as the dates, I personally like November 4th through the 5th. That following week, it's going to be really tough for me, but I don't know if we're discussing that.
Okay. No, I think we are discussing that. And I don't know if everybody can look at their schedules, but let's take a peek.
Are we looking at doing both the 4th and the 5th, or just one of two of those days?
I don't know. It's up to you guys. I work for you, so I'll do whatever. But my thought was one of those 2 days.
Marty,
Andrew, did you have an idea?
I think the 4th or 5th is better, only because I think we need to keep meeting to start, really digging into what we're supposed to be doing, writing suggestions and contrasting what some of the suggestions in the governor's publication is versus what the Erie County sheriffs are really doing. And I'm having a hard time, I've read the New York State book, the suggestions, a few times, and I'm not sure whether I can tell from the policy handbook of the sheriff whether they're doing that or not. So there might be we might need some information from people like Dan, for example, and about what before we can come up with suggestions. And certainly the public input, like the comments we got today, will help steer us. So the 4th is good, or 5th.
Okay, I'll just remind everybody. I don't know if we're if the 4th is the day after Election Day. I don't know if that is going to be tumultuous for anybody. Maybe we can all just take a big deep breath and hold on. But the 4th or the 5th, I think works for me. I will make it work for me. I think that I would encourage more rather than less meetings, and particularly for what Bill just mentioned, we have a truckload worth of work ahead of us in all of our subcommittees. Everybody's gathering articles and research and policies. We're going to have so much stuff to get through that if we don't just start chipping away at it, we're going to be behind. And I have really high hopes for this task force because I've been so impressed with the commitment of everybody and the different experiences of everybody that we can do a really good job if we really put our minds and hearts into it. And I'm in 100%. So I would encourage more rather than fewer meetings. If people can't make it, they can't make it. I'll update them as the chair as we go and keep, putting on the pressure to get things done. So the 4th or the 5th would be better than whatever, the 9th or the 12th, although I wouldn't even, that's 2 weeks in a row. We probably don't want to meet 2 weeks in a row, but maybe every other week. But I'm advocating for the 4th or the 5th.
Yeah, Marty, it's Kevin Barnes. I got a conflict the evening of the 4th, but the rest of the dates that you suggest I'm totally fine with. But the evening of the 4th, I do have a conflict.
Okay. So that's looking like the 5th, and people might have, again, a hangover from the election, although it doesn't look like we'll have a winner by the 4th, 5th, or gosh knows when. But hopefully we'll have a president at some point going forward. So the 5th is better to me so far. Does anybody else have a conflict with the 5th?
I actually have my own town's police reform and reinvention committee that evening at 7. So if we do earlier, I definitely can. But prior to or post 7, I cannot.
Okay. Anyone else? So, Andrew, maybe we could move forward with one on the 5th and have it, is 5 to 6:30 pushing it too close for you, Supervisor? Okay. So, then on the 5th from 5 to 6:30. Okay. Andrew, let it be said, let it be written, or maybe it's the other way.
Okay.
Okay, and quite frankly, I think I'll just put it out there. I would desire, as much as I'm in-person person, I'm also a hugger. None of those things are available these days. So for safety purposes, I would recommend a virtual meeting that we can all share stuff. And if we need to share materials before then, maybe we could figure something out. I know that some of the members of the task force have already sent me more than a handful of documents that we can use for reference material. Again, I don't want to put anything in this document. I'm a professor. I'm not putting anything in this document that we can't support or cite. And unless we otherwise make it known that it is our opinion, and then people can deal with that. But I want to be open and honest about where we get our information and why we think something is true. And so we might have to share materials. So far, what I've received has been in an electronic format. So those materials could be easily shared with everybody and distributed to the various subcommittees. I am looking towards the sheriff's office for some other materials. I don't know if all of those are going to be in an electric format. Maybe I'll have to get some scanning or something done, but I guess what I'm leading to is where there's a will, there's a way. And if we need to find ways to get information to people so that they can be prepared for meetings so that we can start working on our subcommittees independently, I think we can do that. Does that work for folks?
Sounds good.
Okay, I guess there was one last thing. So do people have any issues with me publicly stating now who signed up for what subcommittees? There were a few of us that didn't sign up, and it's probably a technology issue. And one, I swear, signed up, and I don't see that person on my list anymore. So I'm very confused. I think my technology messed up. But maybe, does anybody have a problem? And whoever's here can make sure that they signed up for what they wanted, that I understand that they signed up for which one. And if we want to redistribute anybody, we could do that. Okay. So far under functions of the police, and by the way, I had a couple people that just said, listen, put me where you need me. And so I've taken advantage of that chair. So with that in mind, functions of the police, I have Joseph Agro, Holly Hubert, and Miles, did you sign up for that one? Yes, you did. Okay, thank you. So
You're welcome.
I'm just thinking right now that I no longer lost my mind. So my technology issue just worked. So I'm happy. So we have those three under the second subcommittee, employing smart and effective policing strategies, standards and strategies. I have Melody Baker, Bill Krebs, Issa Feliz, and Miles Gresham. Are we okay with that? Under fostering community-oriented leadership, culture, and accountability, that was an important one, and I'm happy to see that a lot of people wanted to participate under that. So we have Melody Baker, we have Kevin Barnes, we have Olivia Owens, we have Margaret Murphy, and Miles Gresham. And under the last one, recruiting and supporting excellent personnel, we have Missy Hartman and Issa, I put you under that one too.
Sounds good.
Okay, and I didn't put my name under any. I think it might be appropriate for me to be under all of them. I don't know. Maybe one person that can hear what all the different subcommittees are doing might be a organizing mechanism that can say, hey, the other group was looking for this too, or whatever, and maybe share information as we go. But again, I work for the task force, so all of you, I'm giving you a homework assignment. Figure out what you want me to do, my role. If you want me on all the subcommittees, I'll be back up for all of them. If you want me to pick one or two, I'd be happy to do that as well.
Marty, I imagine there will be some overlap between subcommittees, and if there's a committee that I'm on that needs something, or a committee that I'm not on that needs something from one of the committees that I am on, I'm happy to act as a go-between, and I'm also happy to share any research with anyone who's interested, just to kind of facilitate the flow of information.
Excellent, Miles. You have an important voice on this task force, and I want you to use it in many ways. So good for you. Thank you. I appreciate that you already signed up and volunteered for two, and they're both important ones. So good, and thank you for your desire to share whatever information you can come up with. I think that's my second homework assignment as a professor to everybody on the task force. Obviously, once we get into the subcommittees, your task is going to be to start doing whatever legwork you can in collecting whatever evidence, information, research, best practices, articles, newspaper, anything that we can find that will help inform this committee. As a subcommittee, you will put things together, and then my guess is that we'll bring it back to the whole task force at the end, towards the end, and we'll all have an opportunity to have our say about all of the subcommittees and the work product. And ultimately, we'll have to draft things up and make edits and pass things around. But I think we have a good plan here. I think that we have a couple other people that are willing to share their expertise on other committees that I didn't name. So I just, in other words, received another email saying you put me on a couple of committees, so that's good. And I think we have good representation, and I will share this with the task force. And if anybody believes that maybe some perspective or some expertise might be helpful for a subcommittee that's not on there now, that maybe we try to find that person that could fill that gap and cajole them to joining that subcommittee as well, so that we have strong subcommittees, which it looks like we have very strong subcommittees. I'm very happy with everybody's volunteering for this. So we have a date. We have a format, virtual, and we have our subcommittees. I will send that out to everybody today so that everybody knows what subcommittees they're on. I would encourage everybody then we've sent out emails with everybody's email addresses. So as soon as practicable, I think you should meet as subcommittees and start moving, because we've got a lot of miles and miles to go before we sleep. Right, Miles? Anyways, that's my last bad joke of the day.
Hey, Marty. It's Dan
Yes.
Duskoski from the Sheriff's.
Yes,
As
Dan.
the undersheriff had mentioned, I think on the last meeting, not the last one or the one before, if you have any information or data, anything that you need from the sheriff's office, just put it in writing to me, or even any of the subgroups. Just put the request into me, and I will provide that information.
Excellent. Dan, let me say that because we're on YouTube now, that I am very happy as chair with the amount of support and that we've received in cooperation with not only the sheriff's office, but the county executive's office as well. And the offer has been made that they will provide whatever we request. I plan on taking them up on that offer. And now we have a mechanism to do that. Please CC me if you're in a subcommittee on any requests that you send to Dan, and we'll get what we ask for, and then we'll move on. If we need other stuff, once we start looking into things, maybe that'll generate further requests, and we'll take things one step at a time. Okay? Thank you, Dan. That was a very generous offer, and we will take you up on it.
Well, I'm not here, I was assigned by the sheriff, essentially, to be here to assist and support the endeavors of this task force. So that's what I'm doing, and I'm available at any time.
Thank you.
Dan, Cisa.
Yep.
Quick question. When you say a written request, is that does an email through the chairman is considered written?
You can email me directly with any question.
Okay.
Thank you, Isa, for specifying.
Yeah, no, usually when we say, many people say when it's written, they expect a piece of paper and so on and so forth. Thank you.
Or a legal document. That's not what we're doing either. We're asking and they're going to help us out. So I like that.
Hey, Marty, Kevin,
Kevin.
just one suggestion, I guess. Probably if we're going to make any requests through Dan, we probably should touch base with our fellow members of the subcommittee. For example, if I ask Dan for the amount of sustained personnel complaints within his agency for a 5-year trend or something, and Melody's doing the same thing like a week later, like we're duplicating the task. So just to try to be on the same page of the other subcommittee members, maybe we should touch base with each other first before we put out a request to Dan or somebody directly to the sheriff's department?
Kevin, that is an awesome suggestion and one that we need to do. Everybody is very busy, and I know that Dan is too, and we should be as efficient as possible in our requests. And if I guess I was confusing, I think we should all be together before we make any requests of the sheriff's office or anybody else for that matter. I think we should all be understanding of what we're asking for so that we all understand what is being asked for. And so subcommittees should make a list and make decisions on what they would like to have. We'll see if it's out there. We can come together as a group, I think, at one of our next meetings. If you, whatever is generated by then, we can go over what we're going to request, and then everybody will know. And we'll only make one request and share it among the subgroups and task force members. So excellent idea, Kevin. Thank you very much. Anybody else? Did we actually finish exactly at 3:30 p.m.? Boy, I'm just going to say it must be one impressive chair you have of this task. Things on task. Okay. So, as a professor, I always said if I could make my students giggle once a class, I got 50% of my job done. So I got a few of you to giggle there.
Marty, you're gonna lose your reputation to being a nutty professor now that you're very much on time. So come on.
I know. I'll have to protect my reputation in other ways. So thank you all. Thanks to the community out there who provided us with excellent comments and questions and input. I'm just going to say to everybody that we're going to work very hard to digest all of the material that we get. We're going to give it an honest look, and we're going to try to work as a task force to achieve our charge in the best, most productive way so that it helps Erie County in the best way possible. So thank you all for your continued participation on the task force, for your time, for your energy, for your expertise, for your views and who you are. And thanks to the community for entering into this relationship and providing us with information. And I also want to make sure that I give a little shout out to the county executive's office. Andrew and Elizabeth and Monica and others have been very helpful in coordinating all of these activities that allow us to do this charge. So thanks to them, thanks to all of you, and have a great day. We'll see you when we see you.
Thank you, Marty.
Good evening, everyone.
Okay.
So long.
Be well.